The meeting is now live.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Eden District Council's meeting. I'm Councillor Andy Connell, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this virtual council meeting by virtue of being chair of the council. It's being streamed live on the Eden District Council website. Before I start the meeting, I'm going to hand over to Lisa Tremble. She's the council's monitoring officer, and she will take us through routine announcements. Lisa, please.
Thank you, Chair. As members of the public will now be aware, this meeting is being hosted remotely as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and regulations that were brought in via the Coronavirus Act of 2020 allow us to do this. The various elements of the regulations are being complied with in that it allows officers, members and members of the public to participate in our meetings while our current rules of procedure continue to apply. As the chair said, this meeting is being live streamed. It is also being recorded and will be available for 21 days after the end of this meeting. Just in relation to housekeeping for members, please, if you could please keep yourself on mute and your cameras off. And then when you are invited to speak, please turn your camera on and unmute yourself. There is a chat function to indicate that you wish to speak and also to indicate any technical issues. This meeting has a limit of 4 hours, so if we haven't concluded our business in that time, we will adjourn the meeting and reschedule it to conclude at a later date. Voting tonight will be via unofficial recorded vote, except for item 10, as is required by the Constitution. So when your name is called out, please respond verbally if you're for, against, or whether you wish to abstain from the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next step is to introduce all the members of the council by means of a roll call, and at the same time we'll cover agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Therefore, the monitoring officer will read out the name of councillors, and I ask them to respond with present or here, and if they have a declaration of interest to make at that point, if not, something to the effect of no interest to declare. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mrs. Tremble.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Armstrong.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Baker.
Present. I don't know whether I should declare my interest in item 11, the payer of council tax.
No, that's not necessary. Everybody would have to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Banks.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Chambers.
Present, no declarations. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Present and no declaration of interest.
Councillor Connell.
Present, no declaration of interest.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Dew.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Isles.
Present, no declarations. I'd like to inform the chair I'm making an audio recording of the meeting for my own services.
Thank you, councillor.
Councillor Fearon.
Councillor Fearon has sent her apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Greenwood.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Hanley.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Harker.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Holden.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Lancaster.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Lawson.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Lynch.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Martin.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor McCall.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Meadowcroft. Is Councillor Meadowcroft in the meeting?
Councillor Meadowcroft is in the meeting.
I'll come back. Councillor Nicholson.
Present interest in item 16, and I'll leave the meeting for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I just ask all councillors, if you're not speaking, please turn your microphones off. There's quite a lot of feedback. Councillor Patterson.
Present and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Rain.
Present, nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Ross.
Present, no interests to declare.
Councillor Roddle. Councillor Ryland.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Story-Cookson.
He won't be here, I don't think.
Mrs Tremble, Councillor Story-Cookson sends his apologies for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sharp.
Present and no interests to declare.
Councillor Simpkins.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Smith.
Present and no interest to declare.
Councillor Taylor.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Todd.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Tonkin.
Present and no interest to declare.
Councillor Wicks.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Meadowcroft.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Thank you. And is Councillor Ruddle in the meeting?
Yes, I am.
Oh, excellent.
No declarations of interest to declare.
Thank you very much, Councillor. That concludes the roll call, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tremble. We now move on to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. Councillor Story-Cookson's provided his. We know Councillor Thompson is unavailable, and we wish him well in his present health issues. And I understand Councillor Fearon is not present. Have we had apologies?
We have apologies.
We have, haven't we? Yes, we have. Yeah. Indeed, we have. So those 3. Are there any others? Thank you very much. Declarations of interest have already been dealt with. So we now move on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, previous 2 meetings. And from the chair, I'm proposing that the public minutes CI/52/11/20 to CI/65/11/20 of the meeting of the council held on the 26th November 2020 and CI/66/12/20 to CI/69/12/20 of the extraordinary meeting of council held on the 2nd December 2020 be confirmed and signed by myself as a correct record of these proceedings. Do I find a seconder? If I do, could somebody please indicate in chat they will second that? Thank you very much. Councillor Wicks, I've seen first, so Councillor Wicks, I appreciate that. Unless anybody wishes to speak on the minutes. Yes.
Could Councillor Wicks verbally confirm her second,
Oh, I beg your
please?
pardon, Councillor Wicks, sorry.
Yes, Chair, I'm more than happy to second the minutes.
Thank you very much. Unless anybody wishes to speak, we proceed to a vote, and if no one wishes to speak, I will make so bold as to assume that we're all in agreement and a roll call will not be necessary for the confirmation of the minutes as an accurate and true record. I see no indication in chat that there are any problems with that. We move on then to agenda item 4, which is announcements from the chair, and there are a few things I've been asked to announce. Firstly, relating to the COVID-19 pandemic, lateral flow testing for Eden District Council staff has started to be rolled out this week. vaccination in the area for communities is being led by the NHS North East and continues to be rolled out, and it's going especially well in Cumbria and in Eden. Related to this matter are grants. I have to tell you that over £40 million in business grants have now been distributed to Eden businesses, a phenomenal effort by those involved, including the revenues and benefits and economic development teams at the council. There's also the Eden Resident Support Fund, which was set up to support organisations that are helping local individuals and families experiencing significant hardship due to the coronavirus pandemic. That's been allocated additional funding. I'm told that over £250,000 has been made available, and to date over £175,000 of that has been paid out in over 50 separate grants. Among the organisations which have benefited from the fund are Eden Housing Association, the Hospice at Home, Bernardo's, Eden Carers, and there are many more. On the subject of zero carbon, Eden District Council has appointed a sustainability coordinator to join its sustainability team and work on our zero carbon and biodiversity commitments. Eden District Council, working alongside Cumbria Business Environment Network, the CBEN partnership, has announced a 3.5-year Greening Eden project. The aim is to support Eden businesses to reduce their carbon emissions and help save money at the same time. Highlighting Eden, a new arts project has launched in Eden. It's called Highlighting Eden. Highlights Rural Touring and Eden District Council are working together to invite communities across the district to engage in this COVID-secure arts activities and events, on and offline through the new programme. And I'm told workshops are already filling up fast. In respect of Vereda House, recently, Penrith-based 2030 architects revealed the first look at Vereda House's exterior plans. A planning application for the retrofit of the building has been submitted, which the council understands will see it become the nation's first ever net zero carbon retrofit office. And that concludes the announcements from the chair. So we now move to agenda item 5, which is questions from the public. We have received one question from the public, a question from Mr. Jonathan Davies, who I think will now be invited to the meeting to put his question.
Just calling him now, Chair.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Davies, are you there?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm here.
Good. Right. Council have received your question in print, but I think it's appropriate if you also read it out, especially it's not appeared on screen yet.
Yeah, you ready for me to read? Sorry, I'm
here it is. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Davies.
Right. The question I have for the leader is, does the leader of the council feel it is appropriate to be spending millions in public money at a time that the council is moving to rise council tax for the residents of Eden, and at a time that Eden, along with the rest of the UK, is facing massive economic uncertainty caused by the impact of the pandemic on Vereda House, a building Eden Council may never actually occupy due to local government reorganisation?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Davies, and I invite the leader, Councillor Taylor, to respond.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Davies, for raising your concerns again. It gives me the opportunity to reiterate my confidence that it is both right and appropriate that Penrith should have a state-of-the-art building to house public services, whatever the letterhead may be for the local authority delivering those services, as the services will continue. Bins have to be emptied, the homeless assisted, planning decisions made, Council earmarked this money in funding rounds of the previous administration, who had long-standing ambitions for the single site that it falls to us to deliver. The money sits in earmarked reserves. Raising council council tax provides money for revenue which is needed for different purposes than the amount for capital projects and capital funding, such as that set aside for the single site. We have raised £856,000 in additional funding through the government's public sector decarbonisation scheme to ensure that the building can reach Passive House standards. This assists national government and local government to reach our several zero carbon goals, including the goal of Penrith Town Council, of which Mr Davies is a member. I'm surprised that Mr Davies proposes an action which prevents his own authority reaching its policy goals. The Council's vision for Vereda House is to co-locate with partners to create a new model of integrated public services for the area. This model will be robust enough to withstand the challenge of potential local government reorganisation. If local government reorganisation does happen following the consultation period, then the Council will occupy the building well in advance of the government's proposed timetable for change. We're addressing COVID-related economic uncertainty as well as the long-term future through this development. The people of Penrith and Eden will stand a far better chance of retaining their key public services locally by delivering them from a fit-for-purpose base at Vereda House than if we stay where we are at the Town Hall and Mansion House. Neither building is accessible or provided with adequate facilities for staff or customers, and both have woeful environmental standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Mr Davies, have you a supplementary question?
I do, yeah. First of all, thank you to the leader for that, reading the extensive reply there. But given that, as the leader has already said, a grant has been awarded by Salix for funding for Vereda House, the leader's already stated that that funding was already in reserves for the council. Had the funding from Salix not been received by Eden Council, would Vereda House in the current form have continued as a project using those reserves?
Councillor Taylor?
Okay, well, the grant for the public sector decarbonisation scheme, that's a completely different matter. That's new, as it were, new money. Would the money earmarked to develop Vereda House that was earmarked for the single site, would that be spent on the single site? I don't think it's a controversial thing to say yes. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. We move on now. Mr Davies, although you can remain obviously a member of the public observing the meeting, your part in it now ceases, and thank you very much for your contribution. We will move on to question 6, questions by members. We've received 3 questions from members. The first from Councillor Wicks. Councillor Wicks, will you please put your question? Please read it out.
Okay, can I ask the leader of the council, Councillor Taylor, to outline the process being used to fill the assistant directors' roles established in the restructure by the One Eden project, and has this restructure been approved by full council?
Thank you very much. My understanding is that by virtue of holding the portfolio, Councillor Karen Greenwood is going to answer this question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Wicks. The decision to restructure was approved by Council in February 2020. Council subsequently approved a management of change policy in September 2020, which set out the process to be followed for recruitment of all posts. This established a management of change panel, which has been set up and is overseeing the recruitment of the assistant director roles.
Thank you. Councillor Wicks, have you a supplementary?
Yes, I have indeed. Thank you, Councillor Greenwood, and thank you for signposting me into the management of change policy by email. That was very useful. Can I ask, are the present post holders being asked to apply for their current roles, and who is undertaking the interview selection process? If it's the management of change panel, are any external consultants being employed in this recruitment process?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Wicks. And I think I will just ask Mr. Sutton, if he is available, if he could answer that question. Thank you.
Mr. Sutton.
Thank you, Councillor Greenwood. So in the recruitment of the first phase for the assistant directors, we had employed an HR consultant to assist us with the employment of the AD roles.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you. We move now on to Councillor Rain, who has two questions. Councillor Rain, will you ask your first question, please?
Thank you. The chairman of scrutiny waived the call in for the Heart of Cumbria. Please can he explain the reasons to why he made that decision?
Councillor Banks, as chairman of overview and scrutiny, would you like to respond? Is Councillor Banks there? Ah.
Is Councillor Banks in the meeting, or is he just having trouble with his microphone?
He's shown us in the meeting with his microphone on.
Councillor Banks, has your headset become muted?
Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. I'll start
read your
again.
answer, please, Doug, will you?
Yep. I can confirm that I was not asked to waive a call in for the Heart of Cumbria report that was considered by the executive in January 2021. I can't therefore explain reasons for a decision that I never made.
Councillor Rain, have you supplementary to that?
Thank you, Councillor Banks. The waiving wasn't following the executive decision. It was prior to the executive's decision, and it followed the budget planning meeting, which was on the 14th of January, and the executive was on the 19th of January. But my question would be, I understand that the calling was waived from the budget planning committee because there was a shortage of time. Now, we got the pink papers yesterday morning, and it's a very short time for us actually to read those papers. Some of those pink papers were available online, but I couldn't open them, and you and I both discussed this at scrutiny. So would you agree that we could have had some of those pink papers for Heart of Cumbria, which we are discussing tonight, earlier than what we did? I have had mine about 29 hours, which is not enough time to read the document. It's a very important decision we're making tonight, and the amount of money that's been involved in the Heart of Cumbria. So my question is, because I don't think your previous answer is quite giving me the clarity that I needed. So my second question is, do you think we could have had those papers earlier and they should have gone before scrutiny?
I agree, Councillor. We should have had them earlier.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Councillor Banks.
Your second question, Councillor Rain, I think is to Councillor Taylor. Would you read your second question, please?
Okay, thank you. Please could we have an explanation as to why the executive decision on the Heart of Cumbria has not been made public? Thank you.
The decision made by the executive was to make a recommendation to council, and it is included in the public report on the council agenda this evening at item 13.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question to that?
No, thank you. I don't. Thank you for that, Leader.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rain.
We move on to agenda item 7, motions on notice. We have received no motions on notice. We therefore move on to agenda item 8, which is the annual review of the Treasury Management and Capital Strategy, and I invite Councillor Greenwood, by virtue of her portfolio, to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual review of the Treasury Management and Capital Strategy, and the purpose of this report sets out the Treasury Management and Capital Strategy for 2021 to 2022, prudential indicators for 2021 to 2025, and minimum revenue provision statement for 2021 to 2022, meeting all of the Council's statutory requirements. The report reflects the final budget for 2021 to 22 and medium-term financial plan, which are included later on the agenda for tonight's meeting. The Council currently has no external borrowing, although some has been included within the proposed 2021 to 2025 capital programme, primarily to fund the redevelopment of Vereda House and the Town Hall. The Council has received significant COVID-related funding throughout the year from the Government, over £57 million to date, which has increased investment activity in the year, but the pandemic has had a heavy impact on investment returns, and these have been factored into both the strategy and the budgets. So, Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations. Recommendation number 1, the 2021 to 2022 Treasury Management and Capital Strategy Statement, as detailed in Section 3, including the minimum revenue provision policy, be approved, and number 2, the prudential and Treasury indicators for 2021 to 2022 set out in Appendix A, including external borrowing limits, be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, has anybody, as opposed to comments on this, has anybody a question on the report? In that case,
I have, Chair.
It's a question, is it? Right.
It's a question.
Yep.
It probably won't be one that Councillor Greenwood can answer, but maybe Paul Sutton will answer it on her behalf. There's an error in these papers on page 16 at 3.1 and 3.2. The figures are incorrect. The figure 5833 should be 5853, and the figure 1400 should be 1420. The figures are correct in Appendix B, but they're incorrect on this particular paper. I mean, Paul Sutton, given that we're going to vote on this, it's only £20,000. What's that between friends? But it would be good to have the figures correct.
Can I invite the officer? Unless Councillor Greenwood, I beg your pardon, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, Mr. Sutton's better to answer this.
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Apologies. We will make the amendment, and I recognize that it isn't correct.
Thank you. Thanks for your question, Councillor Dew. And looking for a second. No, Councillor Isles has a question first before we get to a second. There's a question about the report. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I think again, Paul Sutton's probably best able to answer this. It's a question I always ask when this comes around about our £4 million in the, I think it's the investment fund we've got, which is favoured by other local authorities. Could you tell me roughly what percentage of our investment is going into retail premises? Because retail is getting a bit precarious at the moment. I'd just like to seek assurances that the £4 million is quite secure. Thank you.
Mr. Sutton, or would you like to respond to that?
Through you, Chair. And off the top of my head, Councillor Isles, I can't, but I will get a written answer out to all councillors.
Okay.
Thank you.
I now see that Councillor Lawson has a question. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you. Yeah, along similar lines, could we get a breakdown of what investment is going into fossil fuels and so forth?
Through you, Chair, yes, we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? In that case, seconder and Councillor Mary Robbins has indicated in the chat function that she was second. So the proposal is seconded. Is there anybody wishes to make?
I will affirm that I will, Chairman, I will
Thank you.
affirm I am seconding that proposal.
You were absolutely right. I should have asked you to give verbal affirmation that you were. Thank you very much indeed. Now we enter into debate. If anybody has anything that they wish to say, here's the opportunity to do so. I take silence then to mean that we should move to a vote on this. Is there any desire to go through the roll call, or will you please indicate in the chat if you'd like a roll call? Otherwise, we'll take it as affirmation.
Affirmation.
Thank you. Well, one of the councillors said affirmation, nobody said contrary. So, Monitoring Officer, we take agenda item 8 to be carried nem con, and we move on to agenda item 9, which is the annual review of the council tax reduction scheme for the coming financial year. And again, I ask Councillor Greenwood, as resources portfolio holder, to present the report.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Greenwood.
Thank you. So this is the annual review of the council tax reduction scheme. And the purpose of this is to undertake the annual review of the council tax reduction scheme and to decide whether to amend the scheme for 2021 to 22 or leave it unchanged. So this scheme reduces the council tax bills for working age people on low incomes, and the pensioner element of the scheme is laid down in regulations. Over 60% of the current 2,860 households eligible for council tax reduction are working age. There is a requirement that the council reviews the scheme each year and determines whether the scheme should be amended. The final decision must be a decision of the council. On the 15th of December 2020, the executive agreed that the recommendation to council should be that the council tax reduction scheme for 2021 to 22 remains unchanged from the scheme in 2020 to 21. As the cost of the council tax reduction scheme has an impact on Cumbria County Council and the Cumbria Police and Crime Commissioner budgets, they were consulted on the proposal and raised no objections. The proposal to continue the current council tax reduction scheme ensures that residents on low incomes continue to be supported to meet their council tax liabilities. This is especially important at the moment with the impact of COVID-19 on residents' financial circumstances. So, Chair, I am happy to move the recommendation that it is recommended that the council tax reduction scheme for 2021 to 22 should remain unchanged from that in 2020 to 2021.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions on this report? No. Nobody has a question. I put Councillor Taylor's put yes. That's not yes indicating a question, is it?
It's yes as a question, please.
Ah, right. Okay.
Sorry. Could somebody explain to us all where this money comes from?
Thank you, Leader. I'll just ask Mr. Sutton if he could answer that.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Taylor, where what money comes from? The local council tax support is a discount. It's a discount that local council tax support taxpayers receive on their council tax.
So, as it were, by not receiving this money, ourselves and the county and the police are out of pocket by the number of people who are not paying. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For seconders, I think the first name I saw was that of Councillor Wicks. Would you affirm that you are happy to second the motion?
I'm more than happy to second the motion. I'm quite surprised that our leader didn't realise that it was a discount and it's not a benefit in kind, but I'm quite happy to second the recommendations. Thank you. Thank you.
Now debate or discussion. I see that Councillor Rain has a comment you would like to make. Councillor Rain.
I see we have a theme tonight because of the insufficient notice period. Councillor, the chairman of scrutiny, had to waiver this insufficient notice, the executive key decision on the forward plan. End of comment.
Thank you. Now, has anybody any further debating points they wish to make on the council tax reduction scheme? Would anybody, in that case, we move to a vote. Would you please indicate, through the chat function or by speaking out, if you wish a roll call? Otherwise, I will take it that the council approves its council tax reduction scheme. Thank you very much. So that is carried. Thank you. That is carried, and we move on to one which I suspect may take a little longer, and that is agenda item 10, the final revenue budget for 2021 to 2022. And I'm going to ask again Councillor Greenwood, as the resources portfolio holder, to present the report. Councillor Greenwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to try and share my screen. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that, Chair?
Yes, I think we all see a nice picture of the town hall. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Right, so let me begin. So I'd just like to start by thanking the Budget Planning Committee, the Executive and all officers of the Council who have all worked since September on this budget. And the budget that you see tonight has been the culmination of 6 months of work from a lot of people, with a lot of feedback and a lot of comment and advice, and plenty of people have contributed to this budget. I just want to thank each and every one of them for every contribution that we have had on this budget over the last 6 months. So thank you to everybody. Especially thank you to the finance team, the tiny little finance team that we have, who have worked so hard all year for this. And I'm very thankful and grateful to those officers. So I just want to say that. So this is the budget which you have in front of you and which we have read, and a lot of it is familiar to people because it's been the same information that's been coming forward over the last 6 months. So, and I understand that you all have to listen to me a lot tonight. So I have decided to do slides, and I want to be as quick as I can be. But I want to look at one of the issues that's been prominent, really, listening to members, listening to residents, listening to people, discussing the budget. I thought that what I'd do tonight is look at what I think is a major issue, and then move on to going through some of our corporate plan priorities that we have concentrated on this year, even though it's been a very, very strange year. And then just talk a little bit about that, and then I will hand over to the leader. So if you just bear with me, and I will begin. So, where does Eden District Council's money come from? So this next year, 2021 to 2022, we will receive from central government £3,835,000, and that is about 48% of the money that we require. Council tax £886, which is 52%, and that makes our total net budget requirement. What do we use our money for? We use it to provide services to our residents. So this is the money that enables us to provide services to our residents. And all I'm going to say is that when we look at that, the distribution of the money, central government funding has declined over the last 10 years, and there are reasons for that. And it started at a time of very volatile economic uncertainty in 2008. About 10-11 years ago, government gave us about £4.5 million, and obviously it's gone down now. But this last year, because of the COVID, they have given us £1.1 million extra. So mostly, if you look at the way that government funding is going, it is declining from central government in a normal year, and government are encouraging us to meet the gap locally. So that's just a bit of background. So the question that I wanted to look at tonight is, why not just use up the reserves and not raise the council tax? This is what people want to know. We are very, very fortunate in Eden District Council that we do have adequate reserves, and they enable us to equip council to offer a modern, efficient, customer-focused service fit for the 21st century and meet the needs of our residents. And in the report in front of you tonight, Mr. Sutton has put section 25 at section 3, the robustness of the estimates and adequacy of the reserves. And if you read what he says that the adequacy of our reserves depends on the delivery of the One Eden transformation programme and the outcome of changes in the government funding. And these are achievable and prudent. These savings are achievable and prudent. However, council must be aware and ready to adapt should the landscape change in the future. So what are general fund revenue reserves and what do we use them for? So these are accumulated surplus monies which can be used to fund either revenue or capital expenditure, and we use them for unforeseen requirements or normal operational cash flow requirements, but obviously that's not sustainable for very long, and for risk taking, for when change happens and we need to invest to save, or we need to invest in change. Our current external funding is agreed for this year only, and there is a risk that future funding will be less. So you can see that the grants and funding situation for next year gives us £3,830,000 roughly, rounded up. And this is how it's set out. And you can see that the forecast for next year is unknown, but a bit of a guess would be that it might go down 10% because we won't probably be getting COVID funding. We don't know what our needs will be. We don't know whether government will give us more COVID funding. We're not sure, but we know that this year what we're getting, and for the next few years, we do not have a settlement. We do not know what money is coming. The risks that we're looking at the moment are obviously the COVID risks, especially for our leisure providers, GLL, who have been very, very good and have run Penrith and Appleby leisure centres for many, many years. We are obviously very committed to the provision of leisure services for our residents. Government have given us some funding to help us with this cost and this pressure this year. And obviously we have applied for more funding, but it's uncertain and we don't know. Also, the Brexit situation, we have uncertainties and pressure on businesses for that. And local government reorganisation, which this week we've had letters about. It's going to consultation, we know that. We know that a decision will be made by the 31st of July, but we don't know what the decision will be or how that will work out. But we do know that residents will still need to be provided with the services that they expect, and that Eden District Council, whatever it is called, whatever it is worked out to be in the future, will be providing those services. And Council's strong reserves are an essential element of the medium-term financial plan. The reserves should not be significantly reduced until Eden District Council has a balanced budget for the foreseeable future. So the question is our revenue budget in balance? So these are the savings that we're going to be making over the next 4 years. You can see in the far right column at the bottom that the total amount of savings that we need to make to have our revenue budget in balance is £1.2 million. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that all in one go. And as Mr. Sutton has pointed out many, many times, he has a legal responsibility to do a medium-term financial plan. And this is what ours looks like for making the savings over the medium term. And obviously, it's a bit front-loaded there. So next year, this year coming, we're going to make £800,000 worth of savings. And to do that, we're going to use reserves of £213,000. Now, if you look at the next year, we're going to make savings of £244,000 and use the reserves at £24,000. The following year, we're paying back the £295,000 back into the reserves, and the year after, we're going to use another £58,000. So if you add up the amount of reserves that we're taking out of reserves, we are putting back in pretty much that number, which is £295,247. So we can use reserves, but we put them back in. And that's because reserves are a one-off. When they're gone, they're gone. We can use them. They help us to manage our finances over the medium term, but we don't use them up because, as I've said, once they've gone, and we need them. So, assumptions. Central government have said that our core spending power will increase this year by 4.6%, and they have assumed that our tax base will increase by 1.7% and that we will increase our income by 2.9%. However, we know that our tax base is staying the same next year. There is no increase, and that the council tax proposed increase that we need to make to fund that gap is going to be we are proposing a 2.5% council tax increase. So we're not going the full 2.9, we're doing 2.5%. And we're doing that for many, many reasons, but we need to be able to provide services for our residents, and government expect us to meet that gap locally, and council tax is the way that we are going to be doing it. Can we use revenue reserves to fund ongoing expenditure? Now, this is a favourite policy of some people, and the answer is, on a temporary basis, we can use the reserves, but we will need to replenish them in due course. Use of reserves for normal operational cash flow requirements is not sustainable for long. Reserves should not be used to fund ongoing expenditure. Having strong reserves has been and will be essential to the council dealing with the difficult environment in which it now operates. So what does Eden District Council spend our money on then? So this is where I just want to talk about our corporate plan, and our vision for Eden is that it is a place where people act together to meet the needs of all and ensure the well-being of future generations. And to our strategic priorities for our vision is that our policies will be sustainable, healthy, safe and secure, connected and creative. So I just want to talk about some of our corporate plan priorities. And what you can see in front of you at the moment is the Sunday Times article, which is praising our track and trace and compliance officers. Our officers, our Cumbrian officers, were nationally recognised for being excellent. This year, they have been absolutely brilliant at the work that they have done dealing with the COVID situation. Council has played an important role as a key partner in the development and implementation of Cumbria's strategic and operational response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Council has provided the district's local track and trace function and manages outbreak control in social and workplace settings. Council supports businesses to operate safely and within government guidelines and works with other key partners to ensure compliance when necessary. So well done to all of our test and track and tracers. Brilliant team. And that logo is for the Green Homes Grant. I'm just going to say a little bit about tackling fuel poverty and the Green Homes scheme. The council has been successful in receiving over £1.5 million in government grant through the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme. The purpose of the scheme is to cut carbon and create jobs by improving the energy efficiency of around 140 low-income households over the next 12 months. Interventions will include measures like external wall insulation and air source heat pumps and solar power. This is in addition to ongoing delivery scheme through Warm Homes Eden, which completes next month, that will see lifetime savings worth £1.3 million for 23 homes. That's going to make a massive difference to people. Also, we have established our Home Improvement Agency. 2020 saw the registration and development of our Better Homes Eden, expanding our capabilities to assist the elderly, disabled and other vulnerable groups to live independently and to improve their living conditions and their health and well-being. So connected. The council is working with Connected Cumbria and through the Borderlands initiative to support rural communities to develop their own superfast broadband networks. Obviously, we live in a rural area and that's going to make a massive difference to communities. And that's a picture of the Walcott Bends on the A66. And the A66 improvement scheme, the council is working alongside Cumbria County Council, Highways England, to develop a planning performance agreement to ensure both authorities are able to provide key information from a technical and community perspective into the dualling of parts of the A66, which is classed as a nationally significant infrastructure project. Obviously, we all know how important the A66 is to our communities. Creative. So what you can see there is a window that's been decorated, and I don't know if you can see, it says Applebee's Window Wonderland. this is a scheme that has been worked on since January, February, and I think it's on for another couple of weeks in March until after the children go back to school. It's a window decorating scheme with paper, and people have really caught this, the imagination of this project in my ward, and the windows are fantastic. And if you're interested, look at the Facebook page for this and the YouTube. It's absolutely amazing, and the lead artist Karen Babillon has done an absolutely brilliant job at working with elderly, young, schools, everybody, and I think more than 10% of Appleby has got involved in this scheme, and the windows are just fantastic. So highlighting Eden, the council has funded a community arts project over the winter months, which will lead up to a light up festival around the March spring equinox on Saturday the 20th of March, inviting individuals, businesses and schools to light up 1,000 windows, doorsteps or gardens with homemade lanterns. And the lantern in the middle is an example of the lanterns that people are making. And there's workshops available for anybody that wants to join in with this. Winter droving. Eden District Council supports Eden Arts practically and with finance to put in place a COVID secure winter droving event in October 2020, and you can see the picture of St Andrew's Church lit up. It was amazing.
Councillor Greenwood,
yes,
bearing in mind the normal provisions of the contribution for debate, you are presenting this, but would you please draw your remarks to a conclusion fairly soon?
Thank you. Thank you.
You've gone over 5 minutes. Thank you. And thank you for raising the point.
Thank you, Chair. The final slide is sustainable. And you can see that there's a picture of Vereda House. And as you've already explained in your remarks this evening, that Vereda House is an ongoing project. A planning application was submitted in January, and it's planned to go out to tender for the works when this is determined. Council has received a Salix grant to support the scheme to achieve a zero carbon Eden aspirations. As you mentioned as well, Chair, £40 million of business support grants have been given out so far this year. And the two pictures at the bottom you can see are pictures of businesses, again, in my ward that have gratefully received the money that has been given and has made their businesses sustainable and ongoing. And you can see that Mark Hillsden came in to say thank you for the money that he had, and he's come to show me that he's made new brochures for his business, which has really helped him. So that's great. And the final thing, the final picture on the right hand side is a big thank you to Eden District Council from all of our families for your extra support. This is the Community Hardship Fund working with Eden Housing Association, Hospice at Home, Bernardo's, Eden Carers, and that's made a massive difference to families in Eden. So these are the services that we have provided this year, and a massive thank you to all our officers and members who have made these corporate plan priorities happen. And thank you, Chair. That's all I want to say. I'm happy to hand over to the leader.
Sorry, you know you're handing over to me.
Oh,
right. Okay. Sorry about that. Can we try and keep our remarks within 5 minutes? That went well over. But anyway, before we go any further, one correction that I should make, which is recommendations. It's a one-word typo, but you should be aware of it, which is recommendation 2.4 for revenue, read financial, and for R, read F. So it's to approve the medium-term financial plan, and that's the MTFP. Any questions relating to the report before we invite a seconder and move to debate? Councillor Wicks, I know you have one.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Greenwood for her party political broadcast on behalf of the Rainbow Alliance. I've never seen a final revenue budget presented in this fashion. I'm sure we'd also like to thank central government for the £1.5 million Green Homes grant and the £40 million support during COVID. I would like to ask that on the assumptions slide, there's an assumption that government that we will increase our income by 2.9%. Is that assumption solely them saying you'll do that from council tax, or is it just a general we will increase our income by 2.9% as a council?
It's to be met locally, so that money is to be met locally, and they do not tell us to raise our council tax at 2.9%, but that is left for us to meet that money locally. So yes, and the options that are available to us are to look at our council tax situation.
And also our commercial income, which we haven't looked at. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Dew has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Greenwood, you made a lot of the reserves and the fact that they can't be used indefinitely to subsidise the budget going forward. At 11.3 on page 9, there's a table, you referred to it, showing the savings from the One Eden transformation, which in 21-22 are going to be 589,912, whereas the target savings are 803,000, Yet in the MTFP, the Medium Term Financial Plan on page 25, the target is shown rather than the actual savings. So there is a shortfall there in savings of £213,088. But when you look at the general reserves, there is no change over the 5-year period of the MTFP. They're shown at £3.201 million. Now, if this budget and MTFP is a true reflection of actual reality, then if we're drawing down money to cover the difference between the target saving and the actual saving, then we should see that reflected in the general fund on page 25, and we don't. So clearly that money is coming from somewhere else. The point I would like to make, Councillor Greenwood, and Paul Sutton will clarify this, is that accounts are just figures on a page and they just move around. The distinction between earmarked funds and general funds are just kind of paper ones, really, because the leader of the council, Paul, made this point about the difference between capital and revenue, and yet if you look at the MTFP, you'll see that in 21-22 we're moving a significant amount of money from revenue into capital and a significant amount from earmark reserves into revenue. I mean, it's just a game, really, isn't it? And so we could take money out of the general fund if we wanted to, or out of earmark reserves, or just about anywhere else. Could you make a comment about that?
Thank you. Can we keep our questions to questions?
It is a question. I mean, I'm asking the question as about the financial jiggery pokery, which is just the way figures work, isn't it, Paul?
Through you, Chair, there are rules that we have to abide by, and simply they are that we aren't allowed to use capital funding to fund revenue expenditure. We can use revenue funding, and the earmarked reserves are revenue funding. We can use those to fund both capital and revenue. Earmarked reserves have to be earmarked for a specific purpose, and they are. The general fund balance is kept as a reserve of last resort, so it's for when things that can't be predicted happen. So we need, as a relatively small district council, to hold greater reserves than we would if we were a larger authority. But there is a definition. The definition is, as I've set out, there can be movement. That is true, but the definitions are there for us to follow, and are clear, and have been incorporated in the budget.
So could I just come back, Chair? I'm sorry, I don't want to push this because this is really, really important because it's central to the whole debate about council tax. Where are you in 21-22, Paul, going to take the 2183,088 that you're not showing because you've just put down the figure of 803k, which is just purely fiction?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's a fair point, Councillor Judy. The balance, the reserves balance over the medium term, and on reflection, actually, probably should have been shown as reductions and then increases back into the earmarked reserves. The position at the end of the medium term would be the same, but you would see that movement through the general fund balance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Nicholson. You have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask Councillor Greenwood about when she was talking about the council tax reduction scheme. She made a reference to hard-pressed families and how the benefits from the reduction would help them out. Now, how does she reconcile that with the proposals to increase council tax? Because the same people who are hard pressed, according to Councillor Greenwood, are going to have to find this extra money. And I'm really just asking if she can reconcile her two statements, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. The council tax reduction scheme is designed to help hard-pressed families. So obviously, it's on an individual basis and at point of need. So I don't think there's a problem with that. That's what it's there for. Council tax reduction is to help people who are struggling and can't pay the council tax, and obviously then get a reduction. I think this last year, people that were in that scheme had £300 to help them with their council tax.
Thank you.
May I respond, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, I know this because I was the resources portfolio holder when the scheme was introduced about 10, 12 years ago. But you have not answered my point. You're asking you're giving one and the same people, and you're saying that they are hard pressed, yet you're going to ask them for more money through a council tax increase. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, given your dissatisfaction with the answer, Councillor Taylor, who I think intended to second when we reach that point, has asked if she can answer your question, so I hope you'll be happy with that. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, so in fact there was a slight stage management problem there, because I co-present this report because this is in my portfolio as well as in Karen's, and I have at length material which will answer Councillor Nicholson's question. So I need to ask, what should we do about this? Shall I deliver my presentation now, or do we leave it until later? So
may I suggest that you do that in your, I understand you're going to second the motion. You will therefore, of course, be able to speak when in the debate you choose as seconder, and I would suggest that that is done at that point, if I may. Okay, I'm not quite sure, Mrs. Wicks, about having out 5 minutes. Can we just have Councillor Martin's question, and then let's proceed to a seconder and the debate.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Greenwood, you said your presentation about we all get the services. My question is, when will everyone in Eden get the same service? Some don't have the garden waste bins. When will every household receive a garden waste bin? We do, in my ward, 2 villages do get garden skips placed in the village, which encourages fly tipping. When will every household get a garden waste bin, please?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Martin. in order to answer that, as you will know, the contract for the waste and recycling is being looked at the moment, and there will be a change in the way that things are done in the future. And the only person that I can think of that could be able to answer that really is either Councillor Tonkin or Mr. Clark. So I don't know if Councillor Tonkin is available to answer that, or Mr. Clark.
I'd be happy to take that, Chair, through you.
Okay, and then let's proceed to seconding and the debate.
Yes,
yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Clark.
yeah. Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Greenwood has said, we are still in the process of reviewing both the method of delivery of our waste contracts and the form of which the services that they will of how they are delivered. So, as part of the evaluation and choices that the authority will be examining, the expansion of the garden waste service will be one of those to all households where applicable, will form part of the options that will be considered. Of course, it will be a decision for elected members to decide which of the options that they wish to carry forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. We now proceed to a seconder for the motion. Councillor Greenwood presented it. I understand that the leader is going to second, and that would you confirm that verbally, please?
Yes, I would like to second this report. Thank you.
As seconder, you can reserve the right to speak. You indicate you want to speak, but it's normal procedure that you can speak at the point when you wish to. But can I now invite, if you want to speak now, please do so. In the meantime, I'm sure other councillors will wish to speak, and they can indicate through the chat function. Yes.
Okay. Could I have a point of order, please? Because I was due to present this report, and unfortunately, I was not able to deliver my part of presenting this report. I'd like to present this early because it answers quite a lot of the questions about council tax that have been coming up.
Well, it would be a seconder's speech. Okay, so you want to do that now?
Yes, I'd second a speech, but I would like to, I was intending to sum up because I was going to deliver my speech in the time that it was planned, presenting the report. And if I leave this till the end, then I believe that it will be a waste of certain sort of shoe leather. Well, but I'll present it now, and we'll just have to see what goes on.
Yeah, I'll take the monitoring officer's advice. It's my understanding that the summing up should be the proposer, and the initial proposer was Councillor Greenwood. I don't.
Yes, I was supposed to propose it.
Right. Well, anyway, we are where we are. So, would you like to speak now as seconder?
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so. So paragraph 4.1 in this report sets out the council's strategic priorities, and you'll see that the first category is sustainable, and the primary essential priority is to make our council financially viable. Without that, we can't do anything. The budget we present to council today delivers on that priority, ensuring the council continues to be financially viable. It represents a balanced budget which avoids cutting services, provides support for residents and businesses affected by COVID, and protects against potential future shocks. Councillors will remember presentations from our 151 officers which demonstrated that without making considerable savings, there was a real prospect of EDC being unable to achieve a balanced budget by the end of the 4-year period. Eden might then be forced to issue a Section 114 notice with all the drastic effects that would have on services and on the council's future. The One Eden programme addresses this, but it is not yet complete. We cannot guarantee that pressures on services and staff from COVID and otherwise may not project achieving these savings still further into the future. The known risks at the moment are far in excess of what would be normal, and there are, of course, unknown unknowns on top of that. This is a balanced, cautious budget, which I'm pleased to recommend to Council. So the budget consultation process is now concluded. 4 of the 5 replies object to the raising of council tax. I thank these residents for taking the trouble to respond to the consultation and appreciate their financial difficulties, but would like to allay their fears as to the amount that the rise will be. 3 of the respondents indicate that both the amount of the rise and EDC's share of their council tax bill are far higher than is the case. A Band E resident says they cannot afford a rise of nearly £75, but the actual rise is in the region of £6. This suggests that this resident has interpreted the £5 rise as being per month or even per week. Another Band E resident cites their monthly bill as being £238. The reality is EDC's share of that Band E bill is about £20 a month. One resident complains that we do not provide good value for money. I don't think that this is the case. A Band A resident pays EDC about £2.50 a week. That means their bin is emptied for less than the price of a supermarket delivery. I think that's a good deal in itself, but not to mention the other things we provide, from housing to environmental health to dog wardens to planning to financial services to building control. EDC delivers great services and has continued to do so through all the difficulties our staff have had to engage with at work and at home. Most respondents, including members of the Budget Planning Committee, who voted 5-4 to recommend to the Executive that there should be no council tax increase, these respondents feel strongly that residents are experiencing great difficulties and, I quote a resident, "This is not the time to increase council tax." We do not underestimate how tough these times are. The question is how best to help. Councillor Dew said in the last Budget Planning meeting that the issue was, and I repeat his word, psychological. How much psychological benefit does a family gain by not having to find an additional 6p or 19p a week? Those on very low incomes can access the council tax reduction scheme, the nature of which I just asked Mr Sutton to clarify for councillors. And the government has passed to us a hardship fund whereby claimants received a £300 bonus this year. EDC has set up a hardship fund administered through Citizens Advice Bureau, Age Concern and many others. Conversely, there are many Eden households who can easily afford 19p a week extra, and it would be unproblematic for them to contribute to the services needed now: homelessness, environmental health, economic development, specific services for COVID. There is a psychological element, of course, as raising or freezing taxes comes with a long ideological history. But we're a humble local authority in the business of providing services, and our income streams are limited. In the aeroplane, if we remember aeroplanes, you are told to put on your own oxygen mask before you help others. The analogy, in case I'm not clear, is that EDC needs to be certain its finances are sound. Without that, we cannot help our residents through the difficult times that still remain. Spending reserves should be a last resort, not a first. Council tax is an important, stable income stream. We believe it is the better course to protect services rather than to make the gesture of not asking for 6p to 19p extra a week. Finally, if we made that gesture, why would we do it? It's not a meaningful amount of money. It's psychological. Would we be wanting to make residents feel we were on their side for their benefit or for our own? Not really for them to feel better, but to make them feel better about us. I think it's the right thing to do to stand by this cautious budget for uncertain times, and I have pleasure in making the following recommendations to Council, which Councillor Greenwood has already done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. Within the 5 minutes. And now I've got to see 2 councillors have indicated they wish to speak. I imagine there'll be others, but will you please now show in the chat function if you want to take part in debate, which now follows. At the moment I see there's two, and the first one is Councillor Harker, so I'll call upon her to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, yes.
Right. I want to say that I will be supporting the budget. The last 12 months have been a testing time for all of us. We have all been affected by the impacts of COVID, but the council has been expected to still provide services and support for all in our community. And I would like to thank all the wonderful staff and officers who have worked very hard throughout and under difficult conditions to continue the council's good work. We need to look forward and be prepared for a brighter future without the restrictions of COVID. This budget provides for this future, and we should not deny our loyal staff and residents the opportunities this budget will provide. I urge you all to support this budget, which has been drawn up by the hard-working officers and staff who vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Councillor Holden, speak please.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'm just going to talk on the budget. I would like to thank Karen for her comprehensive slides explaining the content of the medium-term financial plan, and for Virginia's talk as well. Firstly, this is a balanced budget. It's taken many months to draw up, and ensuring it is sustainable and will enable the council to deliver and continue to deliver services to the people of Eden. This budget is honest and transparent for all to see. Explanations about the financial and resources implications are dealt with throughout the body of this report. There are inevitably risks, and these have been carefully considered, and budgets have been set to reflect those risks. Early promises by the Conservative government to cover the full cost of fighting COVID-19 have been broken. The government now expects councils to cover the shortfall and increase council tax by 6p a week in Band A properties and up to 19p a week in Band H. The council tax reduction scheme, fortunately, is there to help those on low incomes, and it can be accessed by the website or just phone in. The council is left with no real choice. It cannot keep drawing down on reserves as the last administration did. Our reserves are finite. Looking at future government grants and funds on page 7 of the report, from 2022 forecasts are 0 onwards, i.e. unknown. So savings continue to be made, with the One Eden transformation programme estimated to save over £1 million over the next 4 financial years. This programme will see a dynamic, agile organisation focusing on customers, service delivery, digital technology, accommodation, workforce skills and income generation. The single site of Vereda House will become a modern, zero-carbon public service hub. Whatever the configuration of local government, it will future-proof the delivery of quality services to customers and not just for council matters. I believe that not only is this budget balanced, but it is also forward-looking and supports many new initiatives designed to fulfil the council planned priorities of being sustainable, healthy, safe and secure, connected and creative. We are building back better, and this budget is designed to achieve this. I would like to say I fully support this budget and will be voting to approve all 8 recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. Councillor Dew.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to be quoted by the leader of the council, no less, about psychological impacts. It wasn't the psychological impact of having to pay 19p a week. It was the principle of raising the council tax, because we don't live in a bubble. We're not the only people raising council tax by 2.6%, the maximum, or 2.4%, the maximum that we could. The county council's raising tax by 3.99%, and the police precept is being raised by 2.47%, and some parishes will have raised their precept. So it's a package of rises, and the question is, do we need to do that? The leader said that we need this money to pay for homelessness and a list of other emotive subjects, including, I guess, disabled grants and so on and so forth. But we're managing to find in this budget £500,000, over £500,000 for ICT, as well as all the expense of Vereda House. And Jonathan Davis, speaking as a member of the public, made the point well about the £856,000 windfall grant that's come from the government that couldn't possibly have been taken for granted when this MTFP was originally put together. And that would have had to come out of earmarked reserves. And it's not correct to say that we can't make a distinction between general fund balance and earmarked reserves. We moved money around willy-nilly, to be fair. So against the windfall of 856,000 from the government, 105,000 for council tax is actually peanuts. And I think it's just saying to residents, we understand how difficult it's been. It's not just those who are eligible for some kind of a rebate. It's actually those in the middle who are often struggling the most. And we're saying by not raising council tax, we understand that. We appreciate that. We don't need to raise this tax. We could take it out of one way or the other, out of earmarked reserves, just by shifting money around. Because we've got this windfall of 856,000. And it's not true to say that the government hasn't compensated this council well for its COVID expenses. In 2020-21, the financial year we're just coming out of, the government gave grants, COVID grants of £1.097 million against expenditure of £1.073 million. And Paul Sutton, in his summary to the budget committee, said that actually they were in balance positively to the tune of £24,000 because of their government COVID grants. And that's the reality. And I hope people will bear that in mind when they vote for this particular budget, because I don't think we can justify raising council tax at this time. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Councillor Dew. Councillor Rain.
Thank you. I do get a bit confused actually with how you run the meeting. I'm not sure if you do this at county, but we always used to move, second and debate. Basically, mine is a question, and the question is about the saving from the Heart of Cumbria, which we haven't actually passed tonight. £162,084. Where does this saving come from? How come we can get that money from the Heart of Cumbria? But that, of course, is in the next later in the meeting. That is just a puzzle to me. As I say, I got my papers very, very late, and I do apologise if I've missed that in my paperwork. Thank you.
I think Mr. Sutton is going to speak on that. Thank you, Councillor Rain.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So at this point, the savings included within the savings target and is notional, and it does say within the report that if not approved, then the additional savings would have to be met from within reserves. The savings themselves are achieved because the self is front loaded, so the revenue comes in directly, and if it comes in directly to the council, it receives the money earlier than it would do operating through the company itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Ross is next to speak.
Chair, I'm happy to support the budget that has been presented this evening. 2020-21 has been an incredibly difficult year for the council and of course for Eden residents, and the focus of course has been on supporting the health and well-being of residents and the survival of many businesses. This has inevitably had knock-on effects on the council's plans, but I'm happy to see that vital work is now progressing, enabling the installation of insulation and low carbon heating systems in energy inefficient homes, lowering heating bills, improving health outcomes and lowering carbon emissions. We're demonstrating the practicality and viability of zero carbon house building and we're supporting the greening of businesses in Eden so that they can reduce their carbon emissions while improving their long-term sustainability. And I'm very pleased to support the Vereda House project. The council is transforming what was an energy inefficient, impractical and unattractive blot on Penrith's landscape into a state-of-the-art, zero carbon office space, the first in the country, and with substantial government funding, as has been mentioned. And this will not only provide a practical and convenient public service hub for residents, but will help to ensure that services continue to be provided locally, regardless of the future configuration of local government, and will help to keep those important jobs in Penrith. So I will be certainly supporting the budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your Councillor Ross. Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Greenwood put it well. We need money to provide services that, although not statutory, are valued by residents. Two examples that stand out are public toilets and footway lighting. I fought with some success to keep public toilets in Penrith. Other places I seem to remember about less success. Rural members have seen their footway lighting threatened and in some cases lost. With funding from central government reducing over several years, this council needs locally raised money to literally keep the lights on. I will be supporting the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Isles. Next on the list, Councillor McCall.
Thank you. I'm the chair of the Budget Planning Committee, but at the moment I'm speaking as an individual. And my concern has always been that is the budget that we've been presented, is it a balanced and prudent budget, which it clearly is, and also does it expose the council to any significant risk from market forces, interest rate changes, or does it involve excessive borrowing or reducing our reserves to an unacceptable level, or getting us involved in any speculative investments? And the case for that is clearly no. So as an individual, I'm very happy with the budget. Just one thing to mention about council tax. It may be a small proportion of the budget, but you have to remember it's cumulative. If we forgo the council tax this year, we cannot get it back. It'll filter into our medium-term financial plan, and that money is gone forever should our future budget come under pressure. So my recommendation is that we accept the budget as it's been presented to us tonight without any changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I will not be supporting a council tax increase for the coming year. Its timing in view of the ongoing pandemic is wrong. It adds to the burden of resident finances already faced with steep increases in utility bills, and particularly amongst elderly now faced with additional TV licensing payment and rising utility bills. Penrith, Kendal and Kirby Stephen, Kendal of course being a Lib Dem constituency, are not increasing the parish precept for 2021. Dialogue with Penrith residents suggests the present administration, the focus on the Vereda House refurbishment will continue to have precedence over other considerations or issues. The future of vacant properties within the town and elsewhere, and the problems of declining trade, not wholly due to the present pandemic. Also, just as a matter of interest, Band B property increase equates to equates to a £3.64 increase per year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Ryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Greenwood, for your presentation. I too would like to reiterate my thanks to Paul and his small financial team. We have been playing catch up over the last year with many reports and meetings going through slippages, but this is understandable. I'm fortunate to be on the Budget Planning Committee and I've already had sight of these papers for this evening, when I can understand the frustration of other members receiving the 217 papers late. I myself only received them through the post this morning. Councillor Greenwood, you mentioned in your presentation that the reserves rely on the delivery of one Eden transformation project. This project promises much savings that we have supported, and we look forward to achieving, indeed, over achieving the promises of savings that have been indicated. But we need to rethink this increase in the council tax. The amount raised by it is minimal and will not impact upon the delivery of services we provide. Our moral compass is pointing the wrong way, and if ever there was a time to utilise the substantial reserves that council has, it is now. Suicides are up, depression has increased, and everyone has had a bad 12 months. It's not about the small increase, as you say, per month to households. It is the cumulative damage that this can do. A word of caution: the executive risks losing the current high level of residents' goodwill in one fell swoop if this is voted in. As a member of the Budget Planning Committee that voted by majority to recommend no increase, I am so sorry that this recommendation has been ignored. My last point is I actually would urge all members present to really consider their vote carefully. Let us use the reserves to balance the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryland. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you. I'd also like to say that I will not be supporting this budget. I've asked a lot of people in Kirkby Stephen about how they feel about the increase, and they are not happy about it. It's not about the few pence a week or few pence a month or anything else. It's the principle. Kirkby Stephen Town Council have just voted to actually lower their precept to help out our residents. There is no way I can support EDC raising theirs. We have no reason to do it. The 104 can come out of reserves this year. Next year, we can do the raise and carry on as normal. But for this year, for goodness sake, let's support the people who elected us and let's give them something back, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor McCall made a good point about the cumulative effect. There's never a good time to increase council tax, let's be honest. I mean, this has been a difficult time. There's never a good time to do it. And there's always going to be reasons to not do it. I don't know what the reasons were why the previous administration didn't over the course of the time that they were in power. But I do know that it's left us in this situation where we're trying to find funds now to bring back the reserve fund. And I will be supporting this budget for that reason.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, I'm just getting hooked up, if you can bear with me for a moment.
Yeah.
All right. I've listened very carefully to what people have said tonight, and I think we're being asked to accept that without a council tax increase, Eden District Council faces a dire future and is going to go broke. Well, I don't believe that for 1 minute, because what we are talking about here is less than 0.5% of the council's cash requirement. And really, I don't think that any organisation that has budget planning and management skills that can achieve that sort of tolerance in its forecasting and budgeting. When I joined the council I remember having a conversation with the late Brian Metz. Now, Brian was a councillor for Alston and a much respected member of this council. And I asked him about the fact that the independents had a group, and he said, we only have a group because if we didn't have a group, we wouldn't be able to form an administration. And your lot, meaning the Conservatives, at that time we had, I think, 4 members, would be in charge. And I said, well, that's very interesting, Brian. And he said, but furthermore, all of the independents think about things and vote on an individual basis. We don't vote collectively. And what I'm going to do is appeal to every single member of the independent group to think very carefully about what you're about to do and not to support this. I also heard Keir Starmer on television the other day there, and he was urging that this was not the right time to increase council tax. And I appealed to the Labour members of this council, to observe that, because that might be council policy, because we were told by the leader in the newspaper that it is Conservative council policy to increase council tax, and that some were asking for more. So that is the policy. That isn't the policy. The policy is to set a limit on what can be raised, and that is £5 on a Band D property. So, having said all of that, I am going to propose an amendment to the recommendations in front of you, and that is that recommendation 2 be removed, and that a compensating drawdown from reserves is put in its place. And that is my statement, and that is my proposed amendment. And I now invite a seconder, please. Thank you.
We have an amendment proposed. Can I ask that the screen be removed? I don't think that's adding anything to it. Council 25th February 2021. Okay, could we get rid of that, please? It is something I've got to ask our staff so that councillors who are speaking can be seen. Thanks very much. We have a proposal, an amendment proposed. Before we go through the exact wording of that, I understand there is a seconder. Can you confirm that, please, Councillor Wicks?
Chair, you already have a motion and a seconder on the table.
True, that is true.
So you need to dispose of that motion and proposal, or if there is an amendment being proposed, then the original proposer must agree to it. Otherwise, you need to go with the original recommendation and seconder, and that needs to fall before you can look at an amendment.
Right, thank you for the advice. So I return to the
Mr. Chairman,
we have
Chairman, may I seek clarification on that? What I'm proposing is an amendment to the recommendations that are in front of council, and it's always been my understanding that that if an amendment, well, if a proposal is made and seconded, then it can be amended subject to an appropriate proposal, and that proposal being seconded. Is that not correct?
I'm just looking at it, and that's my certainly understanding. An amendment to a motion must be relevant to the motion. It will either be to leave out words and insert or add others, which I think is what you are doing.
Indeed.
And we have a seconder, do we?
I'm intimated I wanted to second that amendment, Chair. Councillor Wicks.
Right. Okay. I think that's my understanding that we now consider the amendment. Does anybody wish to speak on the amendment?
Yes, I was
firstly, actually, before we do that, we need the precise wording of it, because Councillor Nicholson, will you repeat it?
The amendment is that recommendation 2.2 be removed, and that a commensurate increase is made in the amount to be drawn down from reserves.
Right, I think it's appropriate to avoid confusion that we have a 10-minute adjournment so that councillors can consider what this is and it can be displayed on screen. I don't think there's any point in launching it into a discussion on the basis of a verbal description. Okay, so therefore from the chair, I invite you to take a 10-minute break and we'll resume at 20:40. Thank you.
Yes.
Have we been unmuted, Chairman?
I understand so. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Our councillors all back?
Yes.
Right, I have something to say from the chair.
Yes. Chair, before you start, there are two councillors that are not back. Councillor Alan Armstrong, who said he may have to leave the meeting for a minute, but also Councillor Laura Harker is not back.
I understood Councillor Armstrong to be saying he was leaving. I didn't know that that was right. Okay, and it didn't indicate that was temporary. He simply said he had to leave.
It may be a longer term thing, but Councillor Harker definitely isn't back either.
Right. However, in the meantime, I have not been taking part in meetings. I don't know who has. I have been consulting with the Chief Executive, who confirms that the monitoring officer was right and I was mistaken. And an amendment can take the place of a motion when it's proposed at an early stage in the debate, but what's happened here is we've gone on for 40 minutes and the amendment has been proposed, and in these circumstances it falls upon me, as the monitoring officer correctly said, to return to the proposer of the motion and ask whether the proposer of the motion is content that the amendment replaces the motion for discussion and voting on. I think that's correct. Monitoring officer, can you confirm?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. With my apologies that this was a procedure, i.e. the proposal of amendment after 40 minutes of debate out with my experience. Therefore, I'm taking advice from both the monitoring officer and from the Chief Executive. Accordingly, I ask the proposer of the motion, Councillor Greenwood, do you wish this amendment to take the place of your motion?
I am content, Chair.
You are content. In that case, we will obviously vote on the motion, but first, does anybody wish to speak on the motion? And before we do that, we need to see it displayed, please. Failing that, I will repeat it yet again, but it would be better if it were displayed so councillors know exactly what it is that Councillor Nicholson has proposed.
So, one moment, Chair.
Thank you.
Chairman, point of information.
Yeah.
Councillor Greenwood said she was content for the proposal to take the place of what is.
on 2.2.
I take that to be.
Just let me ask the question.
Yeah.
Is 2.2 the only thing that we are actually debating? And is that going to be a separate vote on 2.2? Or are we, how is that going to work? What will be the substantive motion?
My understanding, and the monitoring officer will correct me if I'm wrong, is that Councillor Nicholson is proposing that 2.2 only within the recommendations is amended. We vote on that. If that passes, that then that is what the council decided. If that falls, we return to the original motion, that is the recommendations as they are printed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So do we have the amendment to 2.2 as it has been proposed?
2 seconds, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, God. Okay.
Chairman, I have a point of order.
You have, yes.
The proposer has agreed to the amendment, but I understand that the seconder has not been asked. Is that not a requirement?
Point of information, it's not, it's actually not, they haven't accepted it. They've asked it for a debate. I don't think you need the seconder, Chairman.
They've agreed to it being debated.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I understand that, but okay.
The proposers agreed to the amended, not agreed to the amendment, but agreed to the amendment being debated and voted on.
Doesn't that have the effect of approving it?
Councillor Isles, no. I am content for the amendment to be debated.
Thank you.
And then a vote, okay.
Yeah.
And then we will vote.
On it. Are we going to vote as well?
And we are going to vote.
Yeah. If that passes, that becomes the motion. If it falls, then we return to the original motion, i.e. with point 2 as it was originally written.
But if we approve this amendment, does that have the effect of 1 through 8 minus 2 being passed as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
It becomes a substantive motion then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, can I just clarify that we have a recorded vote on the proposal now in front of us?
Yes. Does anybody wish to speak before we go to a vote, bearing in mind that essentially Councillor Nicholson's proposal amendment came at the end of the debate rather than at the beginning of it?
Chair, I'd like to just say that I will be voting against this amendment. I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody who's spoken can speak again, because if you an amendment, you have the right to speak, even if you spoke before. So I must that must make that clear.
I wish to speak, Chair.
Indeed. Speak, Councillor Dew.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm going to support the amendment. I'll just point out, I'm not going to go back through all the arguments that have already been elucidated, but I just noticed that lots of members came with pre-prepared speeches. So they've clearly not listened to the debates. And the whole point of this is to have a debate, listen to the arguments one way or the other, and then make the mind up, not come with a pre-prepared version of how you're going to vote. I don't think members have understood the budget in any way, shape or form. If we vote against this council tax rise, it's going to be completely inconsequential as far as the budget is concerned, but it will have a significant impact. on the well-being and the psychological well-being of our residents. And I hope the press will take notice of the way this debate has actually played out. So I'll be supporting the amendment because I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Wicks.
Yes, as I seconded the amendment, I will of course be supporting the amendment. I'd just like to make the point again of the government assumption that locally we will increase our income by 2.9% doesn't necessarily mean we have to increase council tax, and we should be looking at more commercial schemes for this council to increase their income.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, I mean, it will come as no surprise that I will vote against this amendment. I find it interesting, Councillor Dew, that you say that we haven't been listening to the speeches, because I set out, I believe, a fairly clear exposition of how a psychological effect has to be balanced against the actual money involved, and that appears to have not been accepted at all. Now, I think that psychological well-being is not greatly improved by the loss of, by being given, as it were, 6p. I think 6p, it has very little effect on the psychological. It is symbolic, and I believe that as everybody's been saying, the people in here and the press and so on and so forth will think that we have done the wrong thing by putting up council tax. But I think that the people are grown-ups, and that they will be able to accept that an incredibly modest rise in their own pocket will have tremendous benefits for the district. And as you say, that oh well, we'll just take it out of reserves. It is not wise to take it out of reserves when the future is so uncertain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chairman. I must admit, for anybody to think that my speech before was prepared beforehand, it's a bit insulting, really. I can do a far better job. But Councillor Wicks says that the government expects it to raise 2.9% out of other sources. Well, we're going to debate Harder Cumbria before, and the previous administration came up with the idea of using affordable houses to replace the money that the central government was going to reduce from it. And quite honestly, that has not been a resounding success. The fact that affordable housing are being supported by being provided mainly by housing associations and not private companies shows how difficult it is to make a profit from affordable housing. That's the sole reason for having affordable housing. They're lower than market rent, so a profit really is not available there. And we've also over the years spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on the first phase of the single site, and all we've got was the world's most expensive car park. So we're pretty good at spending money on things that aren't value for money. So we really do need to raise the money from the sources we have available to be able to provide the services that residents value so much. And I include toilets amongst those, which the previous administration was quite prepared to see them close wholesale, which was amazing. Anyway, I will not be supporting the amendment.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute, but I'm assuming you're calling for me to speak.
You're right. You're right indeed. And now you can hear me, and let's hear you.
Thank you. I just want to say I am absolutely fed up with this debate about council tax becoming political. This is not a political argument. This is an argument for or against our residents, as far as I can see. Our residents do not need, do not want, and cannot cope with this. It's just ludicrous to sit there and say, oh, well, because the previous administration did this or whatever. That's not the point. We were elected by these people to support them and help them. I will be supporting this amendment, and please, for goodness sake, think carefully before you vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lancaster. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't a prepared statement, but I have been listening to the debate. My understanding is that the settlement funding from government is predicated on us increasing our council tax by whatever. And if we do not increase council tax, then we will potentially lose some 85% of the settlement funding in the budget. So we're looking at a lot more than £100,000. So I will find it very difficult to support the amendment. In fact, I should be voting against the amendment. And just one other point on commercial ventures. New Squares comes to mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark. Councillor Clark, you've indicated a wish to speak.
Hello, I'd just like to say that I rather resent Councillor Dew's assumption that some of us have predetermined our answers by writing them down. I've been listening to the debate, and frankly, I will be supporting Councillor Nicholson's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCall.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out that whatever we do with this amendment, when the council tax bills land on Eden residents' doorsteps, they're going to be a huge increase, and that is because there is a large increase coming from the county council, which has been landed with the increased cost of adult social care, which the government is unwilling to fund. So the idea that Eden residents are going to be blighted is they're going to be sadly mistaken, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking off the cuff now. I've not prepared this, but in response to this amendment, which I will not be supporting, I'd just like to point out again that people on low incomes can apply for council tax reduction scheme, and there is always help there for the people who need it. The increase in council tax would actually land at the feet of the people who can afford to pay it. So I don't get the argument that it will leave people worse off. Also, I wish to point out that this council tax fund will support and help the district council to retain and then deliver the services which we deliver now to the residents of Eden. Without this increase, we could well see, our residents could well see some deterioration in the services, or actually some depletion in the services that they receive now. Councillor Isles has already mentioned public toilets, and we could go on to the green waste and other things like that. But I am really keen to keep services going for the people. They've gone a hardship all over the last year with COVID-19. We want these services to be delivered. We want to retain them. The way forward is to raise the council tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. Councillor Lawson, I see no other. Right. We've got Councillor Lawson, Councillor Ryland, and then I really would like to bring this to a vote. We have been talking about this for a long time. Have we any other? Councillor Nicholson, yes, you proposed the motion in the amendment in the first place. Thank you. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. I wish I was the performer that Councillor Dew was. Unfortunately, I had to make some notes during the conversation that was had before I got to speak, and it was from those notes that I was speaking. I mentioned the previous administration only because we've been left in the position that we have got a problem with our reserves. I'm not a political animal myself, and I still stand by what I said, and I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Ryland. Councillor Ryland.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will be brief, actually. I'm very disappointed with the leader. In her speech, she obviously dismissed everything I actually said. And I would just like to say it's quite sad for me as a new councillor to see that the Liberal Democrats seem to be just working on a political whip. They will not actually listen to the arguments. The residents, majority of them, have actually been on 80% wages. And Councillor McCall is incorrect when he said about the residents will be happy to receive their council tax increases from the county council. They will not be happy. And we can actually do something, and we do not need to increase. We can use substantial reserves, 3 million that we have, and you've got to look at how you're going to vote on this. Thank you.
Councillor Ryland. I have 3 councillors wishing to speak who haven't spoken before on the previous motion, so I'm minded they should speak. Councillor Nicholson has the right to, in fact, there are now 4 who haven't previously spoken. Councillor Nicholson, you have the last word since you proposed the amendment, and then we will proceed to a vote, please. But there are 4 councillors, none of whom has previously contributed to this debate. Councillor Ruddall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I am not going to support this amendment, and just to confirm to everybody and Councillor Ryland that the Liberal Democrats have not been whipped in any way, shape or form. It is a free vote and we all vote the way that we feel is responsible, and this is a responsible budget. It's a balanced budget. It makes us financially viable, and I will not support the amendment that deters from the budget that we have in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I also will not be supporting this amendment that's been put forward. I find it laughable that we are to be lectured by the opposition on things like significant impacts on residents and psychological well-being, and on how to best support hard-pressed families when their own party's campaign of austerity over the past decade has systematically cut services, impacting on the most vulnerable in our society. More locally, the legacy for this administration, as Councillor Lawson has already said, has been one of deficit inherited from the previous Tory-run district council. Rural communities are poorly served by government allocation of public funds. In fact, new research reveals that government spending per person on public infrastructure is 44% higher for urban areas than it is for rural areas. Our communities need their fair share of investment. Rural economics need future-proofing, and it is time for the Chancellor to level up against rural disadvantage and submit a fiscal strategy for the future that includes creativity, research, science, new technologies and alternative power sources, and to recognise the collective strengths of rural communities. I'd like to thank the people of Eden District for the great efforts that they have made during the pandemic of the past year. Whilst recognising the stress, challenges and hardship that you have been forced to endure, apart from the personal costs, there has also been a public one too. There has been enormous pressure on our council and on our staff, the financial cost from the enforced closure of our leisure services and the additional workload from track and trace to support our communities and businesses. Throughout the pandemic, the council has maintained all services, and I would like to thank all of our staff for their commitment and hard work during these difficult times. At this time of pandemic, we know that public debt has soared, and as we move into recovery, it is clear that even more support will be needed. With this in mind, it is inevitable that some of the costs will be passed down to us to pay, and there is an expectation from government that we, as the local council, will raise the council tax. We, by law, have to produce a balanced budget, which we have done, and we will continue to deliver on our services to residents without any cuts. We will continue to provide support to our residents and businesses through COVID-19 and beyond, looking forward to building back our economy. And again, I won't be supporting this amendment. And half of that speech was planned and half of it I ad-libbed it, if anybody's interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. It would be quite nice to actually be live if possible, with rather than the shared slide at the moment. But I think when councillors are speaking, I think it would be really quite useful once that motion is up there to actually drop down and people are clear on that before you go to the vote. Right, Chairman. Councillors, we cannot underestimate the challenges we have in the coming year. And yes, this is prepared because I've been giving this a great deal of thought. We're looking to move to what's going to be a post-COVID world, a better world for us all. I'm extremely proud of the work we've done in supporting our businesses over the last year and our residents. I'm extremely proud of the huge team effort from all our staff across the council who have worked tirelessly to action support payments to our businesses, which you alluded to earlier. They've helped them navigate the complex guidance issued by central government. They've ensured ongoing communications over a wide range of media and to a broad target audience on every possible subject. They've signposted business continuity things to the LEP. They've really done an extremely good job, positive job, and all this whilst working from home. Eden businesses have been able to use the business advice service we commissioned and will continue to do so in the coming year. Our tourism team are playing a pivotal role in recovery planning for the reopening of our visitor sector, which starts on the 12th of April. It's all hands to the pump. The work's endless. It's all focusing on getting Eden businesses back on their feet after this dreadful pandemic. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on the best way forward. Everybody's saying you've got to listen to me, you've got to listen to me. Much has been said about the reserves, and I agree it's important that reserves are spent carefully, not just propping up our finances. They need to tackle the expected, anticipated homelessness as furlough stops and as the landlords are then able to evict after the 6 months notice. They need to tackle the empty shops to help the businesses and reopen safely our high streets. There is so much to do, we cannot underestimate the job ahead. Our executive has agreed after much discussion that this budget is the best way forward for the council. I will be voting against the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Simpkins. Then I'm going to ask Councillor Nicholson to sum up and then we'll proceed to a vote. Councillor Simpkins.
Good evening, everybody. I've sat here and listened to it all. Very interesting. We've been spending reserves for years. So at some point you have to give up and start raising the council tax so that we have some reserves when we need them. And we're going into a period now when it is highly likely that we'll need them. As we get over COVID, we need economic development to get everybody back into employment. This is a time when we're going to need reserves, and having those reserves is going to be vitally important. There was a couple of comments about it being a liberal sort of thing. It's not a liberal thing. This council is made up of a number of different parties that work together, and we don't come. We're not whipped to go down a certain line. We agree on things. We debate things, and this could have been debated a long time ago. To bring this amendment in at such a late stage, I think is absolutely appalling. I won't be supporting it, the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So finally, Councillor Nicholson, as you brought the amendment, sum up your case, please.
Thank you. Well, again, I mean, I've listened to the arguments, you know, very carefully, and I would just want to make one or two points, not take a lot of your time. But I mean, we're talking here about less than 0.5% of the council's anticipated spend, and nobody is going to tell me that that is how it is going to end up, because that is a small proportion portion of the tolerances in the budget management process. So whether you do it or whether you don't at the end of the day is not going to make a lot of difference, but it does make a difference as far as individuals are concerned, and it does make a difference as far as individuals' perceptions of the council. The allocations to services are not changed. All the bits in the budget about that remain the same, so there is no reductions. And the good work that's been mentioned many times tonight is not at risk, and it will continue. So don't be distracted by that argument. The budget will still be balanced. There is a myth about a balanced budget, and I mean a balanced budget is where income equals expenditure. It's as simple as that, and income has a number of strands, as has expenditure. A comment was made about Penrith New Squares, and I would just simply point out that Penrith Squares, despite all its problems, presently contributes in excess of £800,000 a year to the council coffers. It has done so for a number of years, and it will do so for many years to come. I think everybody is very sad that the shops haven't been let, but we are where we are, on that one. So don't make the assumption that because we went down the road of Penrith Squares, then it's cost us a lot of money. It hasn't. It's earned us a lot of money, and since it's begun, probably contributed in excess of £7 million to the council coffers, and that's not to be ignored. So really, my final comment is that there's no need for this, absolutely no need whatsoever for this budget increase. So please think very carefully before you vote and don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we're now proceeding to the vote, and I'm going to invite the monitoring officer to call the roll. This is okay. I will say no more. So over to you, Mrs. Tremble. And response, of course, this is voting on the amended budget. So if you're for the amendment or against the amendment or abstain.
Chair, can I just confirm that this is a recorded vote?
Yes, it is.
It is. Thank you.
The Chief Executive already indicated that, yes.
Thank you, Chair. So to confirm, members are voting as per the amendment that was on your screen earlier tonight. Councillor Armstrong. He's left the meeting, hasn't he?
I think he has.
Yes. My apologies. Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Banks.
Against.
Councillor Chambers.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Connell.
Against.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Against.
Councillor Dew.
For.
Councillor Isles.
Against.
Councillor Greenwood.
Against.
Councillor Hanley.
Against.
Councillor Harker.
Against.
Councillor Holden.
Against.
Councillor Lancaster.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
Against.
Councillor Lynch. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor McCall.
Against.
Councillor Meadowcroft. Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
Against.
Councillor Rain.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Ross.
Against.
Councillor Ruddle.
Against.
Councillor Ryland.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
Against.
Councillor Simpkins.
Against.
Councillor Smith?
Against.
Councillor Taylor?
Against.
Councillor Todd?
For.
Councillor Tonkin?
Against.
Councillor Wicks?
For.
Councillor Lynch?
For.
Thank you. Chair, I make that 20 votes against the motion with 12 votes for the motion, so the motion falls.
Thank you very much. That is according with my calculations too. And so we now return to the original motion. It is not my intention to invite any further speeches on this because it was spoken about at length. I simply want confirmation from the monitoring officer that we will. Do we follow the same procedure with the recorded vote on the original budget motion?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. So,
Chair,
yes.
As the proposer of the recommendations, can I
Of
ask that the recommendations be taken en bloc, please?
That is, I think that is sensible, particularly in the circumstances of the amendment having already been discussed and voted on. So yes, we will take this en bloc. That is the 4 features plus the things we have to note, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, so that's the original motion as proposed by Councillor Greenwood and seconded by Councillor Taylor. I proceed to the monitoring officer and invite her to call the roll of voters, and this again will be a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Baker?
For.
Councillor Banks?
For.
Councillor Chambers?
Against.
Councillor Clark?
Against.
Councillor Connell?
For.
Councillor Derbyshire?
For.
Councillor Dew?
Against.
Councillor Ailes?
For.
Councillor Greenwood?
For.
Councillor Hanley?
For.
Councillor Harker?
For.
Councillor Holden? For. Councillor Lancaster?
Against.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Lynch?
Against.
Councillor Martin?
Against.
Councillor McCall?
For.
Councillor Meadowcroft? Councillor Nicholson?
Against.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor Rain?
Against.
Councillor Robinson?
For.
Councillor Ross?
For.
Councillor Ruddle?
For.
Councillor Ryland?
Against.
Councillor Sharp?
For.
Councillor Simpkins?
For.
Councillor Smith?
For.
Councillor Taylor?
For.
Councillor Todd?
Councillor Todd's on mute.
Against.
Councillor Tonkin?
For.
Councillor Wicks?
Against.
Chair, that is 20 votes for the motion and 12 votes against the motion. So the motion is carried.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank all councillors who contributed to what was certainly an intense and thoughtful discussion. We now move on to agenda item 11, setting of the combined council tax this is not really an occasion for repeating the same debate we've had before. I will invite Councillor Greenwood to explain the motion to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the report that is a statutory requirement to set the combined council tax for Eden for 2021 to 2022. It incorporates the council tax base and council tax requirements approved by Cumbria County Council, Cumbria Police, Eden District, and the individual precepts for all of our town and parish councils. The format for reporting the council tax resolution is also set out in statute and results in a recommendation to approve the tax base and precepts for each town and parish area as set out at paragraph 1.1 and 1.2. The impact of the recommendations are then set out for information at paragraph 6 in the report, which is the individual council tax for each town and parish council by council tax band. So thank you, Chair. I would like to move the recommendations that it be noted that on the 15th of January 2021, under powers delegated under Part 3, Schedule 1, Paragraph 7 of the Council's Constitution, the Chief Finance Officer calculated the council tax base for the financial year 2021 to 2022 for the whole council area as 20,741. Item T in the formula in Section 31B of the Local Government Act of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 as amended the Act, and 1.2 for each part of the council's area.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the report? If so, please indicate through the chat function. That being so, I invite a seconder. I see Councillor Taylor has indicated in the chat box. Will you confirm verbally, Councillor Taylor?
Yes, thank you. I would like to second this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody wish to speak to this? That indicates no. Since this is a matter simply of noting a report, I would consult the monitoring officer. Would it be appropriate simply to say that the report is noted unless anybody indicates that they want an individual vote, that we just take it as the council agreeing to note the report? Would anybody like to go through the roll? Or monitoring officer, you may tell me that's wrong to do and we have to do it. If we have to do it, we'll do it.
It is a recorded vote, Chair. It forms part of the budget.
I accept your advice and we shall take then the recorded vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Baker.
4.
Councillor Banks.
4.
Councillor Chambers.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Connell.
4.
Councillor Derbyshire.
4.
Councillor Dew.
Abstain.
Councillor Isles.
4.
Councillor Greenwood.
4.
Councillor Hanley.
4.
Councillor Harker.
4.
Councillor Holden.
4.
Councillor Lancaster.
Abstain.
Councillor Lawson.
Abstain.
Councillor Lynch.
Abstain.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor McCall.
4.
Councillor Meadowcroft.
Against.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Patterson.
4.
Councillor Rain.
Against.
Councillor Robinson?
4.
Councillor Ross?
4.
Councillor Ruddock?
4.
Councillor Ryland?
Against.
Councillor Shah? 4. Councillor Simpkins?
4.
Councillor Smith?
4.
Councillor Taylor?
4.
Councillor Todd?
Against.
Councillor Tonkin?
4.
Councillor Wicks?
Against.
Chair, I make that 21 votes for the motion, 4 abstentions and 6 against.
Thank you very much. That has been
Carried.
carried. The motion is indeed carried. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 12, local government reorganisation key principles, the final submission, notice of key executive decision and actions taken under special urgency rules. This, I would stress, is not a debate about the pros and cons of local government reorganisation. As the leader will explain, it's about something that took place in the process.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to inform Council that a key decision was taken by the Executive on the 24th of November 2020 in relation to the local government reorganisation key principles of the final submission, using the special urgency provisions as set out in the Constitution. This report satisfies a constitutional requirement that the leader submits a report to Council on any executive decisions taken in the circumstances set out in Rule 7.4 (brackets special urgency) close brackets in the preceding 3 months. The executive were required to make this decision, which was then endorsed by full Council on the 2nd of December 2020 and submitted prior to the central government imposed deadline of the 9th of December 2020. Due to tight timescales set by central government and an administrative oversight, the key decision notice was not published as required. As a result, the special urgency provisions were utilised in order to allow this decision to be made. The chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee was consulted and he agreed that this decision could not reasonably be deferred. Thank you. So this is a formal notice of a administrative process, and the recommendation is merely that the report be noted, and I would like to propose that, make that recommendation. Thank you. You're muted, Andy.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to make too much noise rustling papers. I'm aware of the risk of that. Right, as I said, any questions? I don't think we have any questions. And Councillor Dew is indicating speak. Is that a question, Councillor Dew, or is it something you want to say in debate?
No, it's definitely a question, Chair.
Thank you.
This is about our making a proposal, along as it happens with several other districts and authorities, which was fine because it's all part of the democratic process. I just wondered, Chair, whether our leader could explain why she considered it necessary to write to the Government Minister, Luke Hall, and ask him to discount the county proposal for a single unitary, rather than to allow it to go forward as it subsequently has, and go through the fair and democratic process. Why did you consider it, Councillor Taylor, necessary to write to the Government Minister to circumvent that process? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think this is actually really about the subject of this motion, but if Councillor Taylor wishes to respond.
I I do not actually wish to respond to that because I don't think it's relevant to this agenda item, and I would be interested indeed to discuss that further. Thank you.
Okay.
I look forward to that, Chair.
Jolly good. Now, seconder, Michael Isles, Councillor Isles, will you confirm verbally that you would like to second?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Does anybody want to speak on this? Right. This is simply a matter of noting a report, and unless any councillor wishes to have a roll call vote, I would like to take it as take the assent as read, namely that we have noted the report. Are you content with that? Silence gives consent. So that is carried, and we move now on to agenda item 13, review of the Heart of Cumbria. An interest has been declared here by one of our officers, Les Clark. Right, it falls to me to propose this report. The recommendations are to note the executive recommendation to close the company and bring the assets into the council, and secondly to resolve that the Heart of Cumbria Limited be dissolved and the assets and functions be brought into the council. I may say, as proposer, I don't believe it implies any criticism of people who worked very hard on the project, those who became directors, but a recognition that for various reasons this hasn't worked out as hoped, and this is not unique to this council. Similar arm's length companies dealing with residential property have run into problems in many councils. So what's being proposed here is not an unusual step. Can I ask if there are any questions relating to the very short report?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Could I, Adrian? I can't get Adrian. Councillor Todd.
Yeah.
Could I make a comment, please? I can't get it up on my screen. That's all.
Okay, Adrian. The issue is this: if anybody wants to speak on the papers, and there's loads of them, because they contain confidential information, the ruling has been that we would have to go into private session, excluding press and public, which we certainly can do. Am I to understand that those who wish to speak do wish to speak on the matters that are in the pink? I thought that would be the case.
No, I don't, Andy. I noticed, okay. Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a comment, really.
I think before we get to that, you can do that. Before we get to that, I think I need a seconder. There's no question.
Can I ask a question, Chair?
You can ask a question. Is it about? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We have debated this issue elsewhere, and we were wondering about the timescale involved in the acquisition of the company. And we don't think that's sensitive information. Do we have any idea how long this process is going to take? And are we assured that the council will oversee the management, maintenance, and otherwise of the properties involved?
That's a reasonable question. I will hand it over to an officer to answer this question. Mr. Sutton, please.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We're looking to close in this financial year, and we will indeed be putting resources in place to manage and maintain the properties, both that we have now and as they are continue to be built.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I think I do in Councillor Isles. Will you confirm that?
Yes, Chairman. I'm happy to second this motion. Can I just add to your comments. Although I've had considerable criticism of Heart of Cumbria as a concept, I've got no criticism at all of the brave councillors who put themselves forward to become directors. It's certainly a job that I wouldn't never have done. Although I must admit, it was offered to me at one stage. Shows a degree of desperation there. But as I said, I think it was very brave of the councillors to put themselves forward as directors. Thank you.
Now, I have a number of people who are wanting to ask questions. Do these relate to the pink papers or not? Councillor Banks, well, Councillor Rain, you've indicated first. Is this something that relates to the pink papers? Because if it does, we will have to go into private session and take the vote after we've debated and raised matters that are in the pink papers.
No, it is just a comment. What I find about this is very, very sad. There is so many community land trusts starting, and community land trusts are usually in a rural area and not as many people as what the Eden District Council has. If a community land trust can work across by Ravensworth, Patterdale is another one that has just started. I see Judith's just popped up on screen. Patterdale is another one that's starting a community land trust. Why can't Eden District Council make it work? You needn't answer the question. I've got the papers here, but I think there's been some failing somewhere along the line that Eden District Council have not been able to make this work when smaller communities can. Thank you.
I see now, Councillor Dew, I think that's your question, which you've already put. Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Chair. When Heart of Cumbria was first brought forward, I was quite pleased because it took away the right to buy, which I thought was a good thing. Now the Heart of Cumbria is being disbanded. Does the right to buy come into force?
Again, I'm afraid I'm not in a position to answer that question. I'm going to turn to our officer, Paul Sutton.
Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, there's a couple of points. I think to Councillor Rain's point, this is about making this work the best that we possibly can for Eden District. So so the properties move back into the authority. Whilst right to buy does come into play, there are many other options that we have for the use of the property. So for instance, at the moment there's no shared ownership arrangements available for the properties, and these are things where we can look to support both people in terms of rented and homeowner sectors. So it produces opportunities for us to look at both rented and shared ownership for tenants in Eden. So it gives us much more flexibility, having the control of the properties as they come into the council without there being financial impediment in terms of the way that they're being operated.
Thank you, Paul.
Councillor Greenwood. Councillor Greenwood.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to say I'd like to thank Mr Sutton for the review of the Heart of Cumbria Limited report. I thought it was a very comprehensive report, and I'm not going to refer to any of the pink papers, but I would just like to say, while I have this opportunity, I would like to recognise the vision, the hard work, the time and the commitment of the members and officers of the council who worked so hard to get the Heart of Cumbria going, and over the last 4 years. It was the hope of many of us that it would be an answer to our problem of housing our young people in the district and preventing their migration to other parts of our country and the world. We still have the problems where we have the lowest paid workforce and the worst housing situation in Cumbria. Growth, higher paid jobs and good affordable housing are still our aspiration, but sadly we must recognise that professional advice tells us that the Heart of Cumbria is not going to be the answer we hoped for. I would like to give a huge thank you to Mr. Gareth Owens, Director of Heart of Cumbria, for all his perseverance, commitment, hard work over the last 4 years, and to Mr. Les Clark, also Director, and Councillor Mary Robinson, who is our council shareholder, for all their work and guidance on this project. And also I'd like to thank past directors, Councillor Gordon Nicholson, Mr. John Owen, Ms. Paula Breen, and the many officers past and present who have worked together to make it happen. My grateful thanks to all of them.
Thank you very much. Now, it will not have escaped some of your notice that in 7 minutes' time we shall have gone on for 3 hours, and the Constitution requires that there should be a motion to extend the meeting. How long it extends for, of course, depends on whether councillors are anxious to extend the discussion into the details of the pink papers, in which case there would have to be a motion to exclude press and public. Won't anticipate on that, though, given that we've only got 6 minutes to go now. And I understand that Councillor Robinson is going to make the formal proposal to extend the meeting as far as we need to. Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would like to propose that we do extend the meeting and allow proper debate.
Councillor Lawson, I think you want to second, yeah?
Happy to extend that.
Thank you very much. We haven't yet got onto pink papers. I don't know whether we shall. I will take advice from the monitoring officer if the monitoring officer feels that questions or comments are straying into that area. But Councillor Martin has, I think I see Councillor Dew first and then Councillor Martin.
Chair, may I ask that you complete the item of business in terms of allow general assent, that everyone is in agreement to the meeting?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, indeed. Roden seconded. There might be a revolt against that. Can I take it we have assent without going to a roll call?
Happy.
Thank you.
Happy.
Okay. If anybody's really unhappy and wants to vote on it, speak now. Okay, we needn't go through everybody. Thank you. By acclaim. Right, Councillor Dew, you want to comment on this matter?
I do.
Bearing in mind if it's getting into pink paper area,
No.
you know, yeah. Okay.
No, I don't think we need to go into pink papers. I mean, there are 200 pages. I mean, it just goes to show how complex an issue this is and how emotive it is, really, Chair. It was before my time, to be fair, but I do believe it was begun in good faith and carried out with the best of intentions. And for whatever reason, without apportioning blame, we are where we are today. And I think there's no reasonable alternative to the one that's been recommended in agenda item 13. But I won't be able to vote for it out of deference to my colleagues, really. I shall probably abstain, but I just wanted to say that the Arling Close report, which is in the pink papers, which was conducted in October 2020, was thorough, comprehensive, appears to be objective, makes some really persuasive points, and I think that's the way forward.
Okay.
But as I've explained, Chair, I will have to abstain, but not because I don't think the report is a good one. Thank you.
I understand that. Councillors must understand that if we're going to start talking about the report, that is a confidential report. You're entitled to talk about it, but if you do, that will have to be in private session.
I've mentioned it, Chair.
I understand that.
About it.
I appreciate that, yeah. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, it's probably a question for Paul Sutton, actually. I just want to know if the residents are aware of what is going on, if they're aware that it's changing, because they'll have signed agreements. Are they aware that their landlords will be changing?
Not at this stage. And we should remember that the Heart of Cumbria is a wholly owned company of the council. So whilst there is a change in immediate landlord, the council ultimately owns the whole of the company.
But their dealings are with Heart of Cumbria, aren't they?
Their dealings are with
H&H. It is at the moment, isn't it?
It is, and council staff who are supporting the Heart of Cumbria.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Rain, thank you very much, Councillor Martin. Councillor Rain, you've indicated a question.
It's difficult knowing when you're straying into the pink papers, but Heart of Cumbria, they got a loan from the Public Loan Board, and they were paying the council, I can see Paul shaking his head. Am I straying?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Well, more than straying.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry, you are entitled to ask such questions, but there has to be a clear will on the part of the council in that case to go into private session.
Right, okay, so we're stifled until that happens.
Nobody's stifled, but do you want to go into private session?
Well, I would like an answer to my question.
In that case, we have no option then but to say at this point, if it is the will of the council that we move from this agenda item to agenda item 15, and we return later to 13 and 14, and agenda item 15, I'm trying to find it, is that we exclude press and public in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. Do I have a proposer for that?
I propose that.
Thank you, Councillor Rain. Propose it. Do you have a seconder?
I'll second that, Councillor Lancaster.
Right. Is any councillor opposed to this, in which case we'll take a vote? Right, in that case, we are going into private session, and for that purpose, you can confirm, officers, if I'm wrong, we need to go into the breakout room. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So in that case, do we leave the meeting, or do we just, no, we don't leave. Am I right?
Members, you need to leave this meeting. It
So
will stay live, and then there's an invitation into the breakout room. That's the meeting you need to join.
So councillors do need to click leave on their screen. Yep.
Now you sure want to leave. Do we continue?
You then go into your emails where you get the invitation to the breakout meeting. Yeah.
Do we do agenda item 14 before then, Chair?
No, we go back to we change the order, so it's 15, 16, and then it's 13, 14. Been discussed already, okay? Because we go back to 13 for the vote. Okay.
Chairman, can you ask members that they understand what they've been asked to do to actually go out and go back into their diaries to open another meeting?
Mary, officers will make sure that everyone's left this meeting and is present in the other meeting. So if we don't find everyone else in the other meeting, we will pull them in.
Okay, I'll go myself now.
Chair, we are still struggling with 2.
Okay.
Hats off to the IT department.
Once we're satisfied with, oh indeed, yeah. I mean, hats off to our officers who've managed this meeting, and Paul in particular for the amount of input he's had. He's worked very, very hard. If we're all here, I'd like to proceed to the vote, which will have to be obviously a roll call because some councillors are not intending to support the motion. They've explained their reasons why, which are entirely respected. So
we're still struggling to get 2 of them in.
Okay, we'll give it a minute or 2 longer. Then we just proceed to vote, Lisa. The recommendations, remind you, are to note the report and agree to the decision to wind up the, I'm trying to find the exact wording, wind up the Heart of Cumbria and return it to and restore it, if it is restoring, to council control.
That's right, Chair. It's to note the executive recommendation to close the company and bring the assets back into the council, and then
yes,
resolve the Cumbria be dissolved and its assets and functions be brought into the council.
Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was searching for the relevant set of papers, and here they are. Yeah. So you're dash right. Yeah. To note the executive recommendation to resolve Heart of Cumbria be dissolved and assets brought into council. Okay. I think we're ready to vote unless any councillor wants us to wait. Let's go for it, shall we? It's been a long night.
Yep.
Will you do the roll call, please, Lisa?
I can, Chair. So, Councillor Baker.
4.
Councillor Banks.
4.
Councillor Chambers. Is Councillor Chambers in the meeting?
No, he left.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
4.
Councillor Connell?
4.
Councillor Derbyshire?
4.
Councillor Dew?
Abstain.
Councillor Isles?
4.
Councillor Greenwood?
4.
Councillor Hanley?
4.
Councillor Harker?
Councillor Harker doesn't appear to have made it back into the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holden?
4.
Councillor Lancaster?
4.
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat that?
4.
4, thank you. Councillor Lawson?
4, and with gratitude to those involved in the project.
Councillor Lynch?
4.
Councillor Martin?
Abstain.
Councillor McCall?
4.
Councillor Meadowcroft?
Abstain.
Councillor Nichols. Councillor Patterson?
4.
Councillor Rain?
Abstain.
Councillor Robinson? Councillor Ross?
4.
Councillor Ruddle?
4.
Councillor Ryland?
4.
Councillor Sharp?
4.
Councillor Simpkins?
4.
Councillor Smith?
4.
Councillor Taylor?
4.
Councillor Todd?
Abstain.
Councillor Tonkin?
4.
Councillor Wicks?
Abstain.
Thank you. Chair, I make that 23 votes for the motion with 6 abstentions.
Thank you very much. The decision is taken. It only remains to me to go on to agenda item 14, date of next scheduled meeting, which is the 25th of March, Lady Day 2021. I'd like to thank all councillors and officers for this endurance test. Thank everybody for their contributions. Insofar as I'm guilty for having agreed not to hold the 28th January meeting. I apologise, though I honestly don't think that would have made much difference to the prolongation of our proceedings tonight, cropped up in the last 4 weeks. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody, and good night and sleep tight. We shall see you again soon. Thank you.
Oh, Lisa wanted us.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks all. Good night.